Boop, boop. Okay, everything was muted up until then, so now the stream can hear us, so we should be okay.
Oh, good.
All right. Yeah, good.
All that extra stuff that no one needed to hear, they didn't get to hear it.
Oh, good.
Okay, so
everyone missed out on my terrible accent.
you said like the most recent reference would be like Leela's Boil.
Oh, yeah.
From?
Futurama. Where's your pop culture pull?
Wait, I know Futurama. Leela's what?
Her boil on her ass. The one that sang show tunes in the Scottish accent.
Apparently, I never saw that episode.
Sweet Jesus ass Christ. Krista, has anyone showed up in the...
We have one.
One, okay. So it's 5 or 5, Scott. We'll get 5 people or we wait 5 minutes. And then we roll our asses on.
Roll it.
The 5 or 5 deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's my favorite pizza deal.
We roll it like the... well, this is an original Arby's 5 for 5. We just took up the first F, so it's 5 or 5.
Right.
Or 5 inches. I'll take any of those 3. 5 minutes, 5 inches, 5. The third thing. People?
The third thing.
Oh, man.
My cat's part of the video tonight, so that's good.
Well, not technically. Everything right now is just the logo. Nobody gets to see us until...
Is there anything... So you know...
It's on the
just
YouTube.
making sure there isn't... Right. I'm just making sure there isn't anything too pornographic in the background, so I think we're good.
Why? Like, here's the thing: if YouTube has software that can demonetize you because it heard 3 toots of a horn from a Herb Alpert song,
right?
Can't they create an algorithm to recognize,
Boobs.
more often than not, a nipple and just blur it and just leave us alone? Holy shit!
No kidding.
So annoying.
There's no penetration in this video, so you should be okay.
Pretty G-rated. Well, maybe not G-rated. PG-13.
Right.
For spicy language. And
I had a ruler. I could at least black box my eyes so nobody would know who it was me.
So you'd have to hold it there the whole time. And I'd have to introduce you and everyone would know. So.
Yes, I am a witness.
3 minutes. We have dead Sean Connery. Is he dead? He's dead, right?
He has died.
He's dead.
All right, so we have the ghost of Sean Connery up next. Coming up on the 10s and 2s.
That was not Sean Connery. This is Sean Connery. Sean Connery.
There we go.
Says that there's worse things you can do to a woman than hit her.
What is that?
That's something he's quoted as saying.
Like choking her? That's probably worse. I mean, yeah, there's a ton of worse things you can do than hitting anything in general.
Right.
It's a pretty piss poor
But I
argument.
don't think that was the point of why people latched onto that particular statement.
No, I get it. I get it. But like that's the thing. Everybody, as we get more and more woke, wants to look back and be like, "Oh, how dare the older generation not be as woke as we?" Like, well, they weren't us dipshits. Like, you can't do that.
Well, and then our future generations are gonna be like, God, those people.
In 20 years, your kids are gonna think you're like a fucking troglodyte. So just Jesus, what's happening over there?
Apparently, I've knocked down my spit take.
Scott's tearing down his studio right during the live. Oh my God, we have 30 seconds for you to fix this. No pressure.
Done and done.
I don't know. I'm still, for the listener, I can still see a lot of movement and a lot of work being done, even though I'm being told done and done.
Oh my God, it's an earthquake.
And it is an earthquake. We're in the same state, but he's got a very localized one.
Hey, he's pretty far.
Yeah, I'm a lot closer to the nuclear plant than you are, so just
nuclear
keep that in mind.
Earthquake?
Yeah.
You get the acid rain.
You at least have the opportunity to fucking quit town and head east.
Yeah.
Should the cloud go up from...
It'll probably happen when I'm asleep, so I'll be already like I'll wake up with an extra arm or whatever. I'll be that just a leg from under the sewer. It's been 5 minutes. Krista, hit the...
You're gonna wake up as a chud.
Yeah, I'll wake up as a chud. Hit the music, Krista.
Okay.
You're listening to FFOP Radio.
Reach the
Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is Dave, and this is Now That My Kid's Asleep, and I'm pretty sure he is. So we're having a show. Welcome. You may have heard. You haven't been introduced yet.
Oh,
Show started. Guest. You may have heard of our guest from the title of this video, or maybe you heard about it from the Facebook post, or maybe you heard about it from him himself. It's obviously, pardon me as I clear my throat, we have Mr. Scott P. Doc Vaughn. Here he is. Say hello, Scott.
Hello. Radio Land.
This is video land. This is TV land.
All of the above.
We are killing the radio star in this episode.
And yet, strangely enough, I just realized I can't see you.
No, but our audience, that's the thing. The little peek behind the curtain audience is I can always see the guest. You can always see the both of us, but the guest can never see me. So I could be flipping him some birdage. I can be holding up a sign that'll say, say yes if you're retarded. And
this is way too Professor Marvel for my liking, and I think the man should come out from behind the curtain.
Oh, you know what we should do? We should do like a Ghostbusters, like Peter Venkman thing. I'll write something down and hold it up for the camera, and you have to, it'll be like.
I didn't know there was going to be electric shocks.
Yeah, and then we'll do the electric shocks later.
Keep the $5.
Anyway, guys, he didn't get much of an introduction, so let me introduce him a little more. Scott here is the creator of Warbirds of Mars, obviously. Hero lore, if I'm remembering the book correctly. Okay, refresh me on all the different projects that you've got going on right now. I know we're going to push Warbirds of Mars biggest and
Warbirds
loudest later, so get all the other stuff that I'm fogging out of the way.
Warbirds of Mars is definitely my main IP because it has several books and comics, and there's a radio show that Dave might know of because he's been on it himself.
Mm-hmm.
And
I might know.
And right. But I have several other novels out, some of which are illustrated by me, and that will include hero lore. Hopefully before the year is out, I will have finally published my space opera novel.
Nice.
Fully illustrated space opera novel, or at least there's an illustration per chapter, so that counts as fully illustrated, right?
Most novels have 0 illustrations, so I think anything you get above that is great.
No, I give everybody what they want. Like the literate people, they have things to read. The illiterate people, there's drawings to look at. It's pretty.
It's lopsided though. Be honest. There's a lot more.
It is a bit lopsided. Yeah. No, I mean, it's just as picture books go. You want more.
Yeah,
but.
they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but if you were given the option to look at either,
no, there's I remember my word count came in at like 125,000, I think, on that book. So yeah, it's not working.
So you'd have to have 125 pictures.
Yeah.
So also, I always forget this. Hey, hashtag Flamingo Friday, everybody! Happy Flamingo Friday! Yay. I am wearing flamingos. I wore flamingo socks earlier. Our logo, which is over this shoulder, is a flamingo.
Speaking of alliteration.
Totally, Flamingo Friday. So yeah, I'm always terrible at keeping the housekeeping up at the front of the show. So I did the Flamingo Friday. Trung, he is still dead. No batteries. So yeah, also, another thing that both of us have in common that I can plug here is the anthology.
Correct.
Warbirds of Mars, Tales from the Fight.
Correct. Stories of the Fight.
Stories from the Fight. Sorry.
Yeah.
Which
is available on Amazon.
It's back
and has multiple short stories set in the Diesel Punk universe, and one of those stories is written by Dave himself.
Totally. I'll link off to that. I should have linked off to that in the show notes here, but whatever. Maybe Krista can do it in the chat. But that starts my first question, I should say. Why the appeal of the 40s and 50s to you?
Good question. I'll start with earliest memory stuff. You see, I was born And
Mm.
no, as a kid, my dad would take me to air shows a lot.
Okay.
And the biggest air show in the world is right there in Wisconsin. It's the Experimental Aircraft Association, or otherwise known as the EAA, fly-in in Oshkosh, which they do annually. And for whatever reason, even as a little kid, I was drawn. As cool as the airplanes were, I went straight to the Warbirds, which is the term for the old 1940s World War II era fighter planes and bombers. So that was an interest at an early age.
Was it just was it the gateway? I'm talking about just you as a person, not necessarily as Warbirds and Mars, but you as a person, your gateway into the 40s was these classic planes.
I think so. I mean, that's
what you're
part
pinpointing it at.
Yeah. Huh. Between that and just liking old-fashioned stuff, like, I don't know, I just always felt a call to that sort of thing. So, and then when I really started to become an artist, I realized so much of my influence was and still is pulp. Pulp books from the 30s and 40s especially. And so when it came time to try and do a webcomic, it just made sense to try and set something, to do my version of the pulps.
Right.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you realize you've tasked yourself with something and you better get it right. So you start looking at more and more and more of that stuff because, oh yeah, I know what I'm talking about. I love that shit. And then you realize you don't know shit. So you need to, you really need to start doing your research.
So this webcomic and this property opened your eyes to something that had before just been like
an interest. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause basically like I knew you before. I'm pretty sure I knew you before the comic.
Yeah.
Okay. Our timeline is foggy because we're old and my memory's bad. But I think I knew you. I'm pretty sure I knew you before the comic. So I've always known you to have this aesthetic, this 40s, 50s sort of gentleman about town with the fedora and everything, the wool hat. So I mean, it must have obviously been just a style choice at that point.
Yeah, to a certain degree, I was like just drawn to old-fashioned shit, and and that included fashion and so on. But I liked the eccentricity of it for the most part, and then on top of the fiction, I liked certain fictional things that were old-fashioned-y, especially old. I loved old movies, I loved old horror movies, and so on. And so it's like I was drawn to that aesthetic.
Right.
So yeah, and then you're right. The difference is, you think you know something, you think you enjoy a certain aesthetic, and then you realize you better, now you're writing in it, now you're drawing in it, and you need to know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, you don't really, but I was the guy who wanted to jump into that.
If you're like me, and I know you are specifically, you want that legitimacy.
Yeah.
You want that. It's something that everybody I think wants to achieve, but seldom is blending their mythology, their fiction with reality.
Yeah.
And the more you know about something, like if you're saying, okay, I'm setting my world in the 80s, like you're looking up Atari, you're looking up the new Coke,
right.
You're looking up shit like that. Like, and that's why a fictional piece sort of can live or die on whether you, the author of that piece, knows the time, because maybe even I'll broaden it out a little more. If someone out of touch with a culture writes a movie, book, comic about something they have no familiarity with, it seems forced and pathetic and sad, but consumable.
Yeah. Right.
And
yeah, I can definitely think of, right off the top of my head, like I instantly got this picture of.
Yeah. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. The one I'm thinking about right now is a video game that came out that's like so woke. I can't believe it. It has eyelids. This game is so fucking woke, and it's like whatever. But that's the thing. Like that, those things, come in and they maybe hit big because they have the look and the feel of like, your god of war. Like, let's say everybody leans on the mythology, but your hardcore fans will actually look into the mythology and add elements from it and embellish upon just looking at it.
Yeah.
And, I am one of these people who does that like you. Like, even if I write a short story, I will fact check things.
Yeah.
And, even if I can make someone believe for half a second, they're like, wait, what? Like, and you want that. Maybe no one wants to admit it to them. Not everyone wants to admit it to themselves, but I think everybody does. Everybody, when they write fiction, secretly, there's a little tiny like gnome in the back of their mind rubbing his hands in evil glee, thinking like, this could fucking fool at least one motherfucker. And you hope, like, no matter how outlandish, like, I'm sure, whatever, the Warbirds mythology, like, you could probably, in the right context, like if they read the book and it wasn't in a comic book form, probably.
Right.
Or maybe if you slit based on a true story on the front, which literally could be, like, if you're basing it on an alternate history that's split off from a real one, you're like, oh, this is based on real history.
True.
And because, like, look, slap it on a movie, it has nothing to do with the source material, but, whatever, it sells.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm definitely picking up what you're putting down. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to have an aesthetic, but it's not just the aesthetic. It's not like some of those video games that are set in like, some sort of post-apocalyptic, diesel punk or atomic punk type, world where you get to make it up. This is, Warbirds is specifically set in a late 40s that is an alternate history only insofar as history was right up until 1944 or whatever in the story,
essentially.
So everything after that, sure, you can flub some shit, you can add some shit, you can throw in the reverse engineered technology of the aliens, and
creative license takes over.
Right, it does, but up until in terms of like a lot of the fashion, a lot of the buildings, a lot of the planes, and so on. It's like, you got to get it right up to a certain point. You need to have that element of, believability up to a point. So what was it like? What was it like for you writing your short story for Warbirds of Mars: Stories of the Fight? What was the? Do you remember what was it, that you felt like you definitely needed to get right? And certain things, because when you're writing shit like that, that's part of the point here, is like, there's certain things you can flub. There's certain things you can gloss over because, because especially with prose, the reader's going to fill in the blanks in their mind. Mm-hmm. And with there's
short
certain
stories,
things you have to get right.
With short stories too, you have the leisure of being very narrow. Like, in my short story, I got around all the cultural stuff and all the weird references that would have been human and alien culture by just setting it in a place where there wouldn't be any.
Yeah.
So it was a workaround and kind of a cheat. And when I panic, I always just rip off some element of Lovecraft.
Right.
And I've tried not to do that much in the present, but it happens.
But yeah,
I feel like as long as when I'm writing something, as long as the person in the story, if I were in the same position I am writing, I would not leave the questions I would want to ask unanswered. Right. And that's what I think pisses most people off, is like, there are questions that you would ask in those situations, like you're being chased by a monster, or it's the 40s, or there are aliens, or whatever.
Hide behind the chainsaws.
Yeah, like think, and I don't think a lot of people even do that. So as long as I can keep true to myself in that character, like that logically, what even a human being would ask, I'm like, okay, cool, fine, whatever. Like, that's always my first and foremost, is like, if I fuck up one of the references, I'll take a mulligan.
Well, yeah, and yeah, I mean, and I'm the editor, and myself and Kane were the editors. So it's like, if there's anything that was too big of a flub, that's why we're there. We can catch that and say, okay, well, this is great, except.
Yeah,
because I remember, I can't remember if it was yours or somebody else's, but somebody had like a nuke in there.
Wasn't me.
At
I
one
didn't
point.
pull a nuke.
Yeah, somebody had a nuke in the story at one point, and it was like, sorry, I mean, yes, the year would be right, but we never got the chance to. Right, we never got the chance as humans in this reality, in this alternate timeline to finish making atomic technology. So it's like, sorry, that's got to go out.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's a nice thing. What you've got is exactly what I have been preaching about for a long ass time, is a moderated comment section. Like when Lovecraft opened up his world to everybody, he was just like, do whatever you want. And he realized that after he's dead, he couldn't do shit. But right. I would still be like, while I'm alive, some things these characters would not do. And I would take, pains to make sure that like someone doesn't waltz into my property and be like, all zany and shit and maybe all cartoony and off the wall or whatever.
That was the interesting thing about doing an anthology like Warbirds of Mars was, you have this idea in your head of what your universe is, and then you invite other people to play in it. And all of a sudden, the only world that I'm thinking of is airplanes and New York City and these characters in those things. And I mean, it was already evolving and growing the moment that Kane started writing the webcomic, because he definitely right off the bat started taking it places like Germany, and and so on. So it's like, oh God, I never would have thought of that. I would have been, just fighting the occasional Martian, in the city, and because pulp, because the shadow, because things that it informed me. So it was already like growing, and then the moment that you invite a whole bunch of people to play in it, it's insane. It's like I never would have thought of setting a story in Arizona. I never would have thought of, it's like somebody wrote one that was like Shanghai or whatever. It's like, it's just all over the map. And it's like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Yeah. And then, you're right. The only thing that you have to really keep a lid on at that point is whether or not the characters sound right.
Right. It's kind of
because they're playing with your characters.
It's everyone can relate to this. When you invite some friends over, like as a group for a first time, and they're all sort of trying to play in one, like at your house, like, oh, we're having a sleepover and it's the first time we're all trying to play with the same toys and we're like trying to pretend to be in the same universe, and I've got an everything proof shield, and you're like, but you can't. And it's like that sort of sleepover sort of dynamic where you've got this give and take where you're like, well, I want to be in this world too, and my character is doing this. You're like, okay, but I have to draw the line somewhere, for Christ's sake,
And actually that came true too. I mean, in a positive way though. It's like, people writing in their own characters, and I can't remember, God, I honestly can't remember if I want to say I came up with Lady Doyle, but I hadn't even written her into anything yet. And my sister was the first person to write a Lady Doyle story. So really she got to be the first person to flesh out the character. But in the meantime, you had, some of the other stories with completely original characters, interacting with my characters, or one or two stories that don't even have the main characters.
Yeah, because
it still works.
You have to think like this is the world now. It's not just the core 7 people. Like it's happening across USA and beyond. And I sort of did this to myself to the extent that I could. So when I did it twice. When we did, I'll shamelessly plug 2 things that I did. Because you're in one of them. The book, the anthology of short stories for this show, FFOP podcast Pot Boilers, was just like that, where I'm like, hey, write whatever you want. Because I knew that I didn't want to be like, it has to be about the show. It's whatever. Like, bring your own flavor. And some were about the show, and some were not. And some were funny, and some were scary, and some were weird, and some were sad, and some were gross. And I, as an editor, wanted to be like, no, this should definitely not be in this book. However, I preserved everything as it was, sans, like spelling checks and shit like that. Because number one, artistic expression is important. And number two, I am not about censorship, even if it makes me weirded out. So fuck it. I did it.
That's true too. That is true too, because it's like, okay, I've invited people to play in my playground.
How far you let them go?
Right. And while still going, okay, no, that's cool. Because there was a moment where I was, the first couple stories rolled in and they didn't,
you're like,
they weren't playing with the toys in the same way that I would play with the toys. And there's that moment where I was like, that's not what I wanted. What the fuck is that?
And you're like, how dare you?
Back and, right. You step back and you're like, holy shit, this is a whole bunch of people playing in my playground. And this is awesome. Mm-hmm. And I should roll with it. And, if I need to make any minor changes, yay. And if there's something that's way off the mark, well, I shouldn't shut it down if I can help it. Let's feed it and say, okay, well, wait, this is good, but it has nothing to do with my universe. How do we make it fit within that universe?
Right.
And then you make those suggestions and hope for the best.
Yeah. So here's something I recommend, because I did it, and it's the second thing I'm going to plug. If maybe you're familiar with it, maybe you're not, but I wrote a book of short stories revolving around friend of the show, RJ.
Okay.
And he was a security guard at the time at a mall. So I just started rolling through the genres. I wrote an action story. I wrote a sword and sorcery story. I wrote a sci-fi story. I don't remember them all. Like, there was a fantasy story. There was a kid's story. There was a monster story. There was a werewolf story. There was a yada, yada, yada. So I wanted to see if I could stretch into these different things and have them be believable and not just be like the same. I wanted to be the same character, but in different scenarios, and make them be believable. And maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but at least it made me think, like, if I did pick RJ up out of the mall and throw him into a weird space station on one of the moons of Titan,
how would RJ react?
Yeah, how would he react? And that's the thing. All these like prison simulator games really gear you up for that, because you think, oh, if you had a rat in a cage, how would it run through this maze? And all you gotta do is just scale it up and put a person in it, and bingo.
That's true.
So,
bravo.
Write your own anthology of different genres, but the same character.
Really, I mean, technically, I feel like that's, what a lot of writers do anyway. You've got your main hero archetype in your head.
Right.
You're just putting him in different locales or time periods or scenarios, and then you tweak the character slightly by renaming him.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying take the same character each time, pluck him from place to place. Don't be like, okay, now you're here and you believe the situation. Like every time.
You have to give him a new reaction.
Basically, not just a new reaction, but it has to be like, okay, for the one where he is, the new guy, new head of security at the mall, and terrorists try to take over. And he's got to go Rambo.
Wait, what was the name of the mall? Nakatomi? Was that it?
Nakatomi Plaza, yeah. But like that's the thing. When I wanted to take somebody who I knew and be like, okay, now what if I completely brainwashed them into thinking they were an action hero? Like, how would they look and feel? And with the tools at their disposal, how would they react? And, it ends up working out because, in most places there's like, makeshift bandanas, like scarves in Macy's and stuff, and you can Rambo it up. But that's the thing. I think what you should do is, even if you never like release it or whatever, take your characters, like your favorite characters that you're always, the ones that you're like super protective of, like everybody has them if you write.
Yeah.
Take them and put them somewhere they don't belong and see what happens. And don't
And even even
bullshit
just rename
yourself
them if you need to. Yeah.
Yeah, don't bullshit yourself either. Like, because that's the thing. Whatever. Quick off the topic subject. When somebody lies to you and they lie to you into your face, whatever. I don't care. But I always tell them, whatever. You're lying to me and I don't believe you. But up here, you know the truth. So who is winning? Whatever. Don't lie to me. And I have no other platform for it. And I just thought of it, so I thought I'd tell you, Scott.
Oh, good.
Anyway,
back
to it. I digress. However, so what? Moving forward with Warbirds of Mars, where are we? And obviously, and surprise, surprise, I'm sure the coronavirus has slowed things down for you as it has all of the rest of us.
It did in unsuspected ways. As an artist, I ended up having more commissions this year, so I've actually been drawing more than writing, and which means I have less time to draw a personal project like Warbirds. But the whole idea, I digress myself. The whole idea is to I've only got like somewhere between 8 and 10 strips left to finish the webcomic where I wanted to leave the webcomic off before the webcomic plug time, before the webcomic leads into the comic book. And so far only one issue of the comic book is done. The idea is to finish the webcomic and then be able to just focus only on the rest of the comic book and at least finish up the comic series within like so many issues, and then still be able to write more books.
I could swear that I have 2 issues of your comic. Am I
you
crazy?
No, I think you do.
Right. Well,
but you said there's only one available right now.
Comic, there's 3 issues total that you could buy right now. It's the webcomics number 1 and 2, and then the first issue of the Golden Age.
Okay, so that's the one I just
not
got.
set up like this is set up more like a traditional comic book.
Right. And that's the ones I just got at the... Okay, so obviously too late plug, but you were at the Gotham City comic book store in downtown Mesa recently, and figured it was safe if we masked up and went down. I should have grabbed them to show you on camera. Maybe Krista, they're right there if you want to grab them. If anyone in the typing square wants a dibs at one of these, I've got 4 signed copies of the original first comic. So this is not based on the webcomic. This is the full-blown real comic. Right there. Get it. They are.
Get it.
Finally. Get one out of here. Here we go. Bam.
Get through the chopper.
There's the signature right there. If you can see it on the camera, you probably can't.
I
4 of those.
That's me signing it now.
Ta-da! So if you want one of those, give a shout out in the typing square. Did Kayla show up? I feel like she should have shown up by now. What's going on?
I don't know.
This is nuts.
We've got one person that's just like hanging out.
Well, at least we got them. But we get most of our people come by after. So, we'll see you on Monday. Now when the webcomic is done, you're saying that it's it. We're just moving completely into the paper part, or will there be a web version of the Golden Age?
Good question. I'm not entirely sure. The point was to at least finish up. It's like it started off as a challenge to myself. I'm an artist. I'm challenging myself. Can I do comics? Because I didn't like the idea of doing sequential art for a long time. And then I was like, all right, well, webcomics are a thing right now. If I was going to do a webcomic, what was I going to do? Okay, 1940s, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do pulp. All right, let's do pulp. I really don't want to write it, too. I wonder if Kane will write it, because Kane's a writer, and he wants to break into things, too. Boom, Kane starts writing it. So what's next? Okay, if that's going to be the case, I want to do a comic that looks... If I'm going to set it in the 40s and make it kind of old school because web comics are this way, like a monitor, or at least that's how they started. What else is like this? Oh, I'll tell you what else is like that.
Sandwiches.
Sandwiches are like that.
Yay!
Yeah, I'm so glad you're picking up what I'm putting down. You're right along for this.
Ooh,
wow,
I'm a good host.
Yeah. No. My initial one of my biggest influences is Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon strip in the 1930s. These were the Sunday strips.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something like this where it's like, this is exactly what a webcomic is like, but I want to do it like this, where it's, focusing on beautiful illustrations per panel, not necessarily each panel leading directly into the previous or into the next panel.
Well,
so the idea was to tell a story, but tell a story a bit old school.
Okay.
And the reason I'm bringing that up is because, as fun as that was, it's not as much fun anymore. I definitely prefer, which was the growth pattern.
Yeah.
I definitely prefer doing Warbirds of Mars Golden Age now stylistically instead. It's easier storytelling in some ways.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When you say you didn't want to draw art sequentially, like, what was the difference between a web comic and a regular comic? Is it literally just the formatting?
Well, okay, so here's a comic book. Here's my comic book.
I'll pick mine up.
What was that?
I'll pick mine up too. Hold on. I'm looking at it right now.
So, I mean, literally sequential comics, modern comics of the last, however many decades is each panel leads into the next panel. That's your storytelling. It's literally shot.
Okay, so it's more cinematic, where a web comic is more grand scheme.
Well, not necessarily. But for me, in terms of what the Warbirds of Mars webcomic was or is more like, it's back in the frame, is more like this 1930s stuff where it's like, you don't see it leading from panel to panel, in terms of like, this doesn't necessarily finish, this doesn't have this. The only thing this has to do with the next scene is this is a scene in the same story. But then you see, a revelry. Well, the writing takes care of the rest, So,
yeah, okay.
So it's more about what is telling a bigger story with the least amount of art.
Right. Okay, so let me...
And then you focus on that one panel and make it as beautiful as possible.
All right, let me lay this on you. Going over all these old mythology type tales and stuff that I have lately, there's a perfect allegory for this. So, like, your 1930s comics are mythology. It's Enkidu, it is Gilgamesh, it is mythology is big picture ideas. It's like, this is a bad guy, this is a good guy, they fight, there's brotherhood, there's big concepts, and there's lots of moving stuff, and there's lots of sweeping landscapes and beauty, whereas like modern day comics are like today's narrative, like telling someone a story of something that happened. Like it's relatable and it's real. It's not a big picture thing. You can't be like all these sweeping, like all these dudes got together, they did all these things, and Flash Gordon went off, and there was a war. Like there are big bullet points in these old serials because they're mythology. But I think comics are like story.
I think part of what you're saying is true, and at the same time, grandiose mythology is also true of both formats. The difference is, one big difference was, in the 1930s and 40s, what was in, Flash Gordon was in every newspaper in America practically.
Right.
So the difference is, everybody could at least glance at it. Everybody knew what it was.
Right.
The reason that everybody knows, who some of the modern comic book characters are is, whether or not it gets made into a movie. Otherwise they have no reason to know about it unless they're actually going into a comic shop and seeing things.
That's true.
But in either case, it's still about the story that you want to tell. You do have mythology-based characters in modern comics, and I don't just mean the ones that date all the way back, like Superman and Batman, but you do have mythology-based storytelling. It's just the difference is you've only got, there's only so much story that you can tell in a single issue. So you've got 24, 25 pages of a modern comic book. What are you going to do with those 24, 25 pages versus Flash Gordon, which was you could literally save a planet in a 6-panel strip.
Okay, how about this? Because back in the old day mythology, like the stone tablets of Gilgamesh had to be put in such a way that a lot of people could understand it, so all the minutia was cut out. So maybe this is a more apt analogy. It's a matter of space. If you have comic book the funnies, you have 3 panels, so you got to tell a very succinct story. So that's macro. Right. The more space you get, ironically, the tighter that focus is.
Yeah.
So it's more
it's
more like a sharpening or a lengthening of focal point than it is anything. Like the less space you have, the bigger your strokes have to be. But the smaller you get, the more detail. So I guess to a broad audience, big picture mythology, to niche appeal, you're going to want to see those characters because let's be real, Gilgamesh is a character, not a great dude. Like he starts out as a tyrant rapist and he ends up as an okay dude, but no evidence to support it. If it were a comic book, they probably would have gone into that a little more to be like, hey, here's why you should no longer hate this dude. But they had to appeal to a large audience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Maybe it's homogeneity.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure where to either support or attack that statement.
Support the hell out of it.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that came to mind while you were talking about it was, and I know this, is the modern mythology. One of the most important modern mythologies is Star Wars. Star Wars is a 2-hour movie. It focused on, a select group of archetype characters. But you could see the minutia going on around them. And then the minutia started to take on a life of its own simply by having a secondary format such as toys come out. And then there was a description on the back of the toy that said that this character not only had this face that you happen to notice in a background scene, but he has a name and a story. And all of a sudden you have an expanded universe.
My point is not mythology-based storytelling is broad strokes. I'm saying old mythological tales. I'm saying I'm just saying in the old days when someone wanted to tell a tale, they did it very broadly so it could be very easily understood.
Right.
And it's like
not only that, but and it was, how much of it was verbal versus written down.
Right. So that's the thing. And then we flash forward to the 30s where these are in the paper and they're necessarily being sought out for this content. However, it's there, so they have to make it homogenous and mythology they have to be broad strokes and nothing too racy, nothing too specific. But that's the stuff that doesn't last, right? Like no one gives a shit about broad strokes. Like Avatar, whoop-de-fuck. Like that is a big mythology moral story.
Right.
But that is obvious. Like there's a perfect example. That is set like an old-timey tale.
You talking about the animation?
No, I'm talking about the storytelling. Like there's very little character.
No, I know. I'm saying talking about the Last Airbender. Or are you talking about
No. Yeah, the James Cameron one. James Cameron.
Oh, the James Cameron movie.
Yeah,
okay.
The Avatar, not the Last Airbender.
Okay.
Avatar. So it's a big, blunt story. It's mythology.
It is. It's like a very.
You don't give a fuck about the characters. He could be called Gilgamesh. His girlfriend could be called Enkidu. Like it could be like they're forgettable. It's a fable. That's what I'm talking about. That's what a old-timey mythology is. However, you can, if you want to, do a Star Wars and backload the shit out of it and cram its asshole in literally every other orifice with every other piece of detail and flesh it out. So it's moved from, this vague mythology to a specific personal story.
Yeah.
However, I still think Star Wars sucks. Oh my God. And if PJ, if you're watching, if you're the one person, I am so annoyed with your timeline. I do not care about Star Wars, but 17 times a day, I feel like I must be what people who follow our Facebook feel when they look at me post is what I see when I watch PJ post about Star Wars. Oh, my
he's
God.
super excited about The Mandalorian.
Oh, I know. He is head over heels in love with Star Wars, and I couldn't be happier for him. But oh, my God, I could not care less. Holy shit. But listen, I get it. It's something for everybody. It's a pool wide enough and deep enough that if you wanted to, you could soak your tootsies in that motherfucker. However, I refuse.
Right.
I like Star Trek. No wars. We like trekking in this household, Scott. We like trekking.
No wars.
No,
anyway.
No wars. We like trekking. I like classic.
I'm just saying there's plenty of wars in Star Trek.
No movies. I don't want no.
Just the next generation.
Just next, like TOS, TNG, DS9. Done. Voyager. Oh, yeah. Can't forget about Voyager. The hard cut is after Voyager. Oh, my God. I love Voyager, Scott. We can't do that. I can
totally forget about Voyager.
Voyager is, for all the wrong reasons, one of my favorite Star Treks. Like, for everything.
All the wrong reasons?
Yes.
So you're saying you're just interested in Jerry Ryan or what?
Kind of. Like, but that's the thing. Like, for everything that TNG is, like everything that flips my switch on.
Yeah.
Janeway and the rest of the Voyager crew are the polar opposite, but since they are balanced perfectly, just like the Enterprise, there's enough acid to bases that you're like, whoop. Everyone just sort of swaps places, and you're like,
all right. Chakotay. I like
all right. I mean, okay, he's the Worf, and you're gonna be the. I don't know, but you just sort of settle in and you get used to it. And you're like, all right.
Yeah.
It's comfort food. It's formulaic. Every 2 or 3 episodes, Janeway's got to be like, I'm a woman, but I'm powerful. God damn it! For some reason,
actually wasn't a bad Janeway, so you can keep doing it.
I've been doing it for years. Ever since I saw my first episode of Voyager, I said, this is the person I'm going to imitate when I am old and going to cosplaying in Comic-Con.
I know this is a total tangent, but I had Mystery Science Theater 3000 on yesterday, and there was an episode on where Mike Nelson, for whatever reason, thinks he's Janeway.
Oh, yes, I remember that one.
He comes out in the wig with the boobs, and he does a pretty spot-on Janeway.
Janeway's,
gotta admit,
literally one of the easiest captains to do. Like, Shatner has his own nuances that are very tricky, even though everyone does them and says they nail it. Picard's got his thing, but
I nailed it.
Kate Mulgrew is just like... literally, if you know who Paris, Kim, Chakotay are, or who's the half Klingon? I can't remember her name.
Oh, God, I can see her.
B'Elanna Torres.
Oh, yeah, B'Elanna Torres.
I never even watched past season 3, and I remember this shit. You're the guy who watches Voyager all the time.
I haven't watched it in a long time, but I need to again.
It's been years since we watched that.
Yeah, when she goes, Commander Chakotay, take the helm, Mr. Paris. I'm going down in the away.
Fly the ship.
Fly me away. She gets sucked out the porthole. But one of the best captains, because not only... is she a woman trying to make it in a man's world still in the 2400s? She's like, still sexism exists, but she's in that goddamn gamma quadrant, right? That's the worst quadrant.
That was one of the things about that show that really did start to bother me is, it's like we have a formula, but we're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, and the ship always looks fantastic. Like it never took a hit.
Well, okay, so I used to have that same bug up my ass, but here's the thing.
Right.
I think I have a workaround. Replicator technology literally is a hand wave to almost anything you can pull out of your ass. Because if they say... Let's say Paris and Kim come to Janeway and they're like, hey, Janeway, fucking that Romulan dude, he fucked up some shit. The guy who wanted the water with the dry hair, he set a bomb and their thing blew up. Good news, though, replicators exist, so we already made a new one and put it in. Bye.
Do you think in Star Trek, this is based on what you just said a minute ago about literally being able to pull anything out of your ass.
Yeah.
Through a replicator. Do you think replicator logs exist and therefore you need to feel like you have to be worried about being sex shamed if you have anal beads designed by your replicator?
Do you think
Replicator. I need anal beads.
In a world where a holodeck exists, do you think I'm giving a second glance at a fucking replicator? Like, I'm going to look at something that
who cleans the replicators, who cleans the holodecks?
Nanomachines.
Oh my god!
It self-cleans.
Listen,
It's like an oven.
if you like,
self-clean.
yeah, like I cannot believe, like, in the future there must be such a gridlock on privacy, because you would like to go into a holodeck and to have access to literally anything, and then like to have that information fall into literally anybody's hands, because if all, like, right now, no one can keep a secret. If someone farts in Congress, it's on the fucking Twitter sphere in under a minute. So imagine, like, in a world of social media also existing with the world of a holodeck where people can do, kill, fuck, X, Y, Z, anything.
In any time.
I don't know.
We can't even put our phones down in modern, with the way things are now.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine humans with holodecks. No way. No one would ever come out.
Right. But here's the thing about Star Trek. Since replicator technology basically puts, since there is no economy, it's all status based. Like, because that's a weird thing to think about. No one on the Enterprise makes any money or has anything beyond like a rank given to them by people who let them in. Yeah. If you take a test, like, there's no money, like, they're not doing it for the health benefits. Like, healthcare is fucking free. Like, you can, that's the thing. Everything is like skill and or status based. So, like, to me, that would be the perfect economy, because all the shitbags would fall off, the end, where everyone who wants to work hard because they want to work hard and have something to prove and achieve would do it. Like, you'd be flying around space or whatever, but you would literally need replicators to cut off the dead chunk of society and to cut off the rich chunk of society that manipulates the middle part so they can have a fucking share and a shake. Replicators would bring everybody. That's the thing. High tide lifts all ships. Give everybody a replicator. We would still have people pushing. We would still have people looking, because let's be real. Before there was money, people were looking up at the moon and be like, I'm going to get there one day, motherfucker. And we did. Money eventually happened, but we didn't need it. We all just were like, I want to go to the moon. And we got like 40,000 people together, and they were like, yeah, we'll just volunteer 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year.
Weekend warrior astronauts.
Yeah.
There you go.
Weekend astronauts. But I digress. Star Trek is a terrific show, and so Deep Space Nine, probably like third or fourth.
Yeah.
DS9's kind of my number 2 to number 3, depending on the week. Just because I really loved. I loved the characters. And the story arcs, and I loved the idea that
a lot of them overlap
that show
too.
Well, yeah, and the fact that show allowed for sequential storytelling, and the writers on that show were never afraid to take characters to not only the next level, but the level after that, and the level after that. I mean, look at Nog. Nog starts off as this Ferengi brat who wants to rob people on the space station. He ends up the first Ferengi in Starfleet, loses a limb in war, and essentially, depending on the continuity, becomes a Starfleet captain.
It's fucking crazy that, like, it. Still, I'm blown away. Like, the Federation is just rolling around the galaxy, and they're coming into like contact with Klingons and Romulans and shit. And the Federation is like, one day you can join us if you stop being dicks. You'll get this awesome technology. And I don't understand. Like, there are a lot of things I don't understand, Scott. Maybe you can fill me in.
That's
but
obvious.
So like the Federation has replicator technology, but the Romulans have cloaking technology, and neither of them can get together to be like, this is something we both would really benefit from. And seeing as how They like.
Well, hang on. Let me pause you there.
Okay.
A, I'm pretty sure that Romulans have replicators. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they do.
So then let me.
But B, the only reason that the Federation doesn't use cloaking technology is because they think it's bad form. So it's not that they
like
can't.
a cop out. Like
yeah, they totally think it's a cop out. Like they don't.
I was always under the impression
they see it as underhanded. It's bad cricket, old boy.
I was always under the impression that they were that technology was inaccessible by the Federation.
But
No, I mean
how.
it's not right because I mean they have it in DS9. Yes, the Romulans gave it to them, but eventually they just start using it anyway.
Well, I mean, how many times do they see like a Romulan ship like not broken down, but like pieces that they can probably figure out how to use it by their
there's weak links in
well,
every
and
chain.
they stole the technology for cloaking back in TOS, you know, just to make sure that there was still balance in the the Cold War. They stole a cloak and cloaked the Enterprise at one point.
That's what.
So it's not as though they couldn't have just kept doing it. They just seem to think it's bad cricket and they don't do it.
But here's the thing: not one species achieves space travel, realizes their insignificance in a literal infinite expanse.
Right.
But there are still people who are like, yep, I'm going to conquer it all. I'm going to live 80 years, but somehow I'm going to conquer the whole fucking universe and keep it indefinitely. Like everybody just forgets they're mortal. In a time where I recognize that I am a mortal human and replicator and holodeck exist, like, sayonara, you'll never see me a fucking again. Like, I would be, well, maybe you would. I would have part of the holodeck be like a nice studio. I'd be like, hey, holodeck, make that 10 square foot pad a nice studio. The rest of this is going to be an F shack or whatever, but that would be the thing. Like, since everything is now freely available to everybody, like if you wanted to have just like a building where you have like a wood shack or whatever, like anyone could do anything. And I don't know.
Is there a limit? Do you think? Is there a limit? I mean, because essentially what a replicator is energy, right? So is there a limit on how much energy you can use before they're like, okay, you've taken down several of our power plants just trying to build a house today. Maybe you should lay the fuck off.
Well, so that's another sticking point is like, okay, so we get power from dilithium crystals and it seems like they get used up like gasoline as an allegory because they occasionally have to add new ones.
Right. Yeah.
So
I'm sure there's a whole book, we're asking some we're asking some deep fucking questions as if there isn't a book out there on this shit. I'm sure there is.
I've probably had the technical manual to the Enterprise, but my problem is like, it's...
No, I don't just mean that. I mean like somebody who's got some sort of like Star Trek Bible that says, how the economy works, how the energy, necessities work, on top of everything else. It's like,
there's
how
no
much
way.
energy does it take?
There's no way.
How much energy does it take before you make that one last request at the end of the day for the replicator to pop out some anal beads? And they're like, well, that's one request too many.
Let me ask you this: and isn't like, wouldn't this be the first thing? Like, let's say you find a genie lamp, and the first thing you would ask is, can I wish for more wishes? You make a replicator. Can I replicate dilithium crystals to power this fucking replicator? Obviously it's not. It's not going to be a perfect system. There's going to be some loss, but in a pinch, voila! Like, I don't know, whatever. That's the thing. The future is weird, and who knows? The economy is strange, in a world where, yeah, there will always be people who want to like get up early and be a military thing and like go, yes sir, even though there's no money involved because they get a little pip on their collar, and I'll be down here fucking hanging and banging because whatever. What am I gonna do? Like everybody's got a replicator.
Well, that's like there are so many people on the Enterprise.
That's like over 1,000,
and they all don't have a job. Like there's no
there's
way.
like kids and stuff.
Yeah. There's like moms just hanging out.
Like there's,
it's like all right.
There's
I
kids
can't
just ordering
imagine
video games on their replicator.
With a crew of over 1,000, how many simultaneous projects must be going on at any one time?
I want to see that episode of Star Trek where suddenly like the saucer section can't hold anything more because all the kids started using the replicators to order everything that they fucking wanted.
Right.
Like every toy, every video game is just like pouring out into the halls.
Are there holidays? Like, do they get a Christmas?
They have holidays. Every alien has their own holidays because there's tons of episodes that center around them. I would love to have seen an episode though where like,
what did we even get?
I don't know, but here's the thing. I would love to see an episode where like the Enterprise's Wi-Fi goes down for like 6 hours.
Oh my God.
And every fucking space kid and everybody off duty is like, what the fuck? Like at my job, if my internet goes down, like the building shuts down. Imagine being on the Enterprise and like the computer's like, oh shit, my Wi-Fi. And it's like, boo. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, there's 1,000 people who need Netflix.
Well, we've got some power in. We've got some Wi-Fi
you can
in
always
the main
reroute
section of the ship, but not in the saucer section. So we should just leave the saucer section.
Yeah, they just sort of pop off every once in a while. Yeah, like what a cush job, and just like to hang out on the fucking like essentially the Enterprise is a space luxury cruise liner without all the nightmare of like being in open water and completely assaultable and dismissible into the ocean. Like you're part of, a crew. You're not necessarily having to work super hard. Like Geordi is always crawling through Jeffrey tubes and shit. But like, since it's his thing and he likes it, like that, great. Like,
right.
It's like, oh, do you
say that as if the expanse of space isn't enough to like terrify, the average person, the same way that looking at the ocean gives me an existential crisis.
Right. But keep in mind, this is the 2400s. We've had a couple hundred years of space travel under our belt. So...
Yeah, but you're still like in a starship, like at probably days away from the closest friend.
People are so jaded. Like cosmic horror is nothing anymore. Like if I were to talk to a kid, like if I were to go up to 12-year-old and be like, what do you think of the unending cosmic black void of space? And they'd be like, I deal with that shit for breakfast on TikTok, bitch. Like there's whatever, like
terror to freeze your soul.
Yeah.
If you were to see it all at once, it would stop your heart with fear.
Fuck that shit, man. I'm going to do a sweet ollie off a curb and go get a Slurpee. Like, but that's the thing. The more we learn, the more jaded we get. So by the 2400s, we'll be so fucking... Like, the only thing that can scare us is the Borg, and it's only because they are literally unstoppable.
I bet they're the ones putting those monoliths down all over the world.
Probably. Borging it up. But yeah, so
Swedish.
Whatever. Moral of the story is the future is in the future. So whatever. And plus by then
that's why it's called
Star Trek.
Shit. Well, yeah. I was trying to think of the other term for science fiction, which is
science faction.
Yeah, I can't think of the word that I want to think of right now, so forget it.
Theoretical scientific fancy.
Yes.
Thank you.
A science opera.
Yeah, one of your science whimsies.
Right. A romance of the ages, of the future.
And here's what I'm saying. I'll tie all of this together by saying this. Because a lot of people will balk at certain genres. And I was one of these people too. I used to be a person who was like, ew, Westerns. Like, I live in the Southwest. I have an impacted ass full of Southwestern culture. But that's a very stupid thing to say. And having thought that, I can say that. And I'll tell you why. a story is a story. A compelling character can be put anywhere and they will draw you into that world.
Yeah.
So saying to someone like, I don't like sci-fi or I don't like Western, like that's fucking retarded. So you're saying that like you don't like compelling characters if they happen to take place in the future and have like struggles and conflict, or like you can't identify with someone who maybe has a struggle in a desert, like whatever. I'll watch anything, not rom-coms though, because that's the only genre that is literally garbage. Like, you know what's going to happen every time.
Don't be judgmental. Don't be judgmental. But I'm going to be judgmental on this one.
There's an exception that proves every rule, and every genre is legit and kosher, save for rom-coms. They suck. They're garbage. They're daytime television. They're Jerry Springer of cinema.
But it's just like, but again, you know, every once in a while something comes along that is a game changer. You know, that does make you at least, you know, or that can be the one that speaks to you, despite the fact that you don't like a genre. I mean,
I'm not saying it doesn't
really
fill a niche. I'm just saying it fills a very large, very shallow niche. Like no one like who watches a Wendy Williams broadcast comes away being like, yeah, I feel like that was something that somebody had an artistic expression in. No, you're like, that was garbage noise that I could put on while the kids shit all over the floor and I try to cram Cheerios down their face. Whatever. But so there are things to fill each situation. Like when I'm chasing my kid around the goddamn house and he's got his dick in his hand and he's got his thumb up his ass and I'm like, get back here. Like, the thing I want on the TV is not a slow, contemplative documentary about, like, the making of a piano in the 1800s. It's probably Doc McFucking-Stuffin. And it's just garbage noise, so it's filling a void.
Or puppies on YouTube.
Well, yeah, or puppies on YouTube or whatever. So I'll never say that.
I like puppies.
I'll never say it shouldn't exist, but I will say that I'll never be part of the wall-eyed mouth breathers who filter feed that shit.
You guys have a very interesting existence over there. Just saying. Somewhere between the lack of romantic comedies and the kid shit on the floor. I'm thinking that this is a weird existence, and I've been over there a few times, but I've obviously not seen the truth of existence.
No, you never can. And that's the thing. You don't understand like the depths of like how far you can let your standards slip until you have basically a pet monkey. Like a child is essentially a primate that you stole from the Congo or are now raising as your own, because you're starting square one. Like he may be a human being, but his slate is blank. So
it's up to you to fuck that shit up.
Yes. Right. So he's essentially a very weak chimpanzee. Like the only thing that is like, if he had the strength to rip off my face and genitals, I wouldn't be here, because like, he's completely unreliable. He's a toddler. And, you'll find yourself with shit places that shouldn't have shit in it, or things in the toilet you never expected to find in the toilet, or you'll find yourself saying or doing things that you never in a million years thought you'd do or say. And eventually you just get so jaded. You're like, your life becomes 2020. Like if you've ever had a kid, 2020 should be a breeze. Luckily I had my kid during 2020. So my fucking heart is like a fucking small compact piece of coal. I'm so jaded. Like nothing you do can hurt me. Like I've seen my kid shoot out a diarrhea fountain inches from his asshole, just splattering everything in sight. And I was just like, yep, just another fucking day in the neighborhood. That's how it goes, Scott.
I got nothing.
Yeah. Would I, had I known if I were going to sign up for like a constant shit fountain and like a smell factory and like someone, it's like having a mental
Nobody
patient
told you.
too.
You didn't get the memo? I thought,
like
that's one of the reasons I signed off on.
I keep saying this. I keep saying this to the adults that were adults when I was a kid, because everybody tells you these things, but they always tell you tongue in cheek. They always say, "Oh, this will happen and that'll happen." And what they really need to do is take you sternly by the shoulder and look you in the fucking eyes and be like, "No, seriously, you're going to want to put your head in a meat grinder."
Why they don't? The species would end.
Right,
Oh,
right.
No, it wouldn't. Like, come on.
Because everybody's always like, "Oh, the terrible twos. Ha ha ha! Terrible twos. It's so
no,
fun."
as long as like there's as long as Mountain Dew exists and a base consumer for that product, there will be children. There will be lots of children. Don't worry about it. The second Mountain Dew like collects dust on a shelf, that's the day we got to start worrying. So don't worry about it. So Scott, let's get back to you. Let's start plugging some of your stuff.
Right.
This, I'm almost positive that in this video, I did put your website. So there's probably places to go from your main site. I'll add more if
quite
you
a few.
need.
It is a hub, a veritable hub
Also,
of things to see.
Here's an announcement. Tomorrow and probably next week, I'll be releasing the Warbirds of Mars episodes, like radio plays, as bonus episodes on this feed, or not this YouTube feed, but the podcast feed. So bonus content.
What?
So yeah, and let's talk about what that is, what those episodes are.
So back, oh my God, it's so long ago. Like it was in a day when, like when you're like, oh, how'd they get the sound to be so terrible and 40s sounding? It's because I was using terrible equipment in that first one.
It was the 40s.
It was the 40s.
Yeah, but that's, you want it to.
Yeah, that was the thing though. It worked because I needed to have like scratchy radio quality, and luckily I had a fucking closet full of mics I'd been collecting. So yeah, we got 2 episodes,
I
right?
have one of them.
Yeah.
That's mine right there.
Yep, there we go. It's totally rad. So we got 2 episodes, right?
Yes. Right. Yeah, we've done 2 so far. There's always a third one in the works.
Yeah.
Perpetually in the
I think I've got like a couple scripts banging around my computer.
And there's at least one that I am like halfway through too. So that's
Someday.
There you go. Just put them together.
We'll exactly. But we completed we've completed 2 episodes of Warbirds of Mars as 1940s style radio shows, starring me as several characters, you as at least one character, and my sister writer Megan Vaughn also as at least one character.
Yeah, she was Josie, and I think I was just Jack.
Yeah, you're Jack. Yeah, you're Jack Paris, and I'm.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, I think you and I both have traded. No,
maybe
I've played Mr. Mask with like some sort of sound filter, and I think you had a buddy on one time who played Mr. Mask.
I feel
but
like
I usually play on.
Maybe
David did. When I was there for the second one, I feel like David did more than one person, but
I know in the second one, I know Scott died in an elevator shaft. Yeah,
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, because
really
I remember my character running up and seeing him being like, "Oh shit, you're dying," and he's like, "What about New York?" And I was like, "Don't worry about a thing." And you're like, "Thank God those alien fucks didn't get it." Racist to the end. This guy.
And I also do a lot of the narration.
Yeah, the
like
narration you did,
old-timey radio voice.
Yeah, it was. They were really fun. Like, and if we weren't on lockdown and shit.
Yeah, but now's the time for you guys to make a script, and then when 2022, when people get their heads out of their asses, maybe we can see each other again.
Don't get me wrong. I have so many things I have to keep on the back burner. I would love one day to exploit everyone I know and somehow get a short film put together.
That'd be fun.
Totally.
I would like there are several concept albums and several musicians I've been trying to get together. I would love to put together another anthology, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I know the feeling. But one way or the other, like, Warbirds is a property that is my baby, and I keep doing it even when I, there's huge gaps of time in between projects sometimes, but it's always something that I come back to. So doing a third radio episode is always like a tasty sounding morsel to me, especially seeing how like the first episode's like 9 minutes and the second episode's like 14 minutes. So it's not like it's a huge investment for anybody. It's an investment for us to make it because it definitely takes time to write it and produce it properly. You know, everybody wants to get the voices to sound right, and then you want to put the sound effects in and the music in the right places. You don't want it to be shit. You don't just want to slap it out, and we never have. It always, you know, they're very cool. I'm very proud of them.
I think
and they sound good.
To the best of my ability at the time, I will say that. The disclaimer, because these are both very old, and I think if we were to redo them today, I could probably do a better job with my high-end equipment and stuff. So I'm going to say, to the best of our abilities at the time, I think they did, you know, I think they were gangbusters. And like, just to put it in perspective, like those 9 and 14 minute, whatever long they are tracks, like in real time, an episode of the podcast takes whatever, 3 days, and it's an hour and a half worth of content. So it's an hour, whatever, to record. Then I've got twice as much time to process and edit it and then upload it. And so whatever, basically it's hours and hours and hours of my time but it's like a huge chunk. These were small, like they're little tiny things, and they took twice as long as a show to put together because
I can remember.
It was crazy.
If it was I remember. I can't remember if it was the first episode or the second episode, but like we were literally, I want to say it was the second episode. We literally recorded everything, and then we listened to each of us, and each one of us in turn was like, "No, I can totally fucking do that better." Like every time,
oh my God,
we all did like a second or third or fourth take on everything.
It's like the middle of the night, and we're just like, "I can fucking do this."
Yeah,
we were in that studio for so long.
It was like very Kubrickian, where it's like, okay, again,
it really was.
and again and again and again.
But it was worth it. I mean, it sounded good. None of us are embarrassed by it. It sounds awesome. You know, it sounds like a 40s radio program, you know, done with modern technology, and you know, it's like it's a podcast, but really it's a 40s radio show.
Basically, yeah. And you know, given the time, and that's the thing, produced content like that is so labor intensive.
Yeah. Because then you have to edit it all together so that it sounds seamless, and then throw in the sound effects.
Yeah, because this is.
And try not to let the sound effects or anything sound too repetitive, because you only have a handful.
Right, and you have to make sure all the levels are the same. Like it's, and you're like, would this be appropriate?
Yeah, that's just that stuff, and then you have to engineer it. You know, you engineer it in a way so that it sounds good, you know, from beginning to end.
Yeah,
and that's a long process.
That's the thing. The longer something takes, you know, it's like whatever the concept of delayed gratification is, and that's also the most heartbreaking thing is like the stuff you put the most time into, and you're like, oh my God, this is the best I can get out of myself right now, and you show it to someone, you're like, ta-da, and like to you, you're looking at this like gleaming diamond floating like like an inch above your palm, and it's like dee, slowly rotating, it's like gleaming, and they look at it, and it's like a Play-Doh like turtle, and it's like covered in fingerprints and shit. It looks awful, and you're like, see, and they're like, oh yeah, and they give you a nice pat on the head, and they say, oh good, well go put it on the counter, and we'll look at it later. And I'm like,
it never changes. From childhood, it never changes. You get better at it. You get better at things, you know, you do but you know, ultimately, you know, what you see in your head versus what other people see is two completely different things.
And I think eventually you can look back at the thing you held and see it the way they saw it and be like, oh, that's why that happened. I think if you're self-aware, you can do that. If you're not, then you're like Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, that's also a pitfall too. It's like, you don't want to be so self-aware that you never get anything done because, you know, you're so busy thinking it's just going to suck and that nobody's going to, because, you mean, there's plenty of things.
Too meta in yourself.
Right. Yeah. And there's plenty of things that you do that, you know, you think suck and everybody else thinks rules. So, you know, the opposite can be true too.
That's always going to be the truth. And 9 times out of 10, whenever I'm like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. Like if I haphazardly, like, let's say photography is the easiest example. Like if I go out and I'm like, snapping some photos and I take one, like oftentimes if I'm thinking I'll use a picture, I'll hold down the shutter button, take between 5 and 10 shots. So I know I'll have one locked. if I don't give a shit, I'll be like, click. And that is the one I'm like, well, maybe I'll just edit it for giggles, and maybe I'll throw it up on Instagram or do whatever. And that's the one where like everyone goes ape shit.
You thought you were shining a turd, and it turns out it was actually pretty good to begin with, and now you've like made it into something special.
But then I'm like, why? Why did anybody like this? Like all of the ones I put so much time and effort into, everybody's like, oh, interesting. Just kidding. I don't care. Scroll. The ones that I'm like, basically my asshole is clenched over Instagram and I'm like, plop. Everyone's like, oh my God, so thought-provoking and moving. Oh shit. All the stuff that I think is so like hack and passe, everyone's like, bravo. This is high art.
Well, which just goes to show you it's, why things are popular. Or not why things are popular, but that things are popular. Certain things speak to a greater number of people,
but you'll never know what it is.
Right. But
the point is
when you do it, it doesn't necessarily make it hack. It's your version of something that's been done, and that's fine. If some critic comes along and calls it hack, well, fuck them. I mean, maybe they're right, but still fuck them.
Right. But the point
is you did something that spoke to the masses. It's nice when you can do something amazing that only, it's like that you were proud of, regardless of whether or not it speaks to 2 people or 2,000 people.
Maybe that's my thing, is like, I don't see what they see in it, because like when I put the thing out that I like and that I orchestrated and that I like, my little Freddy versus Jason shoot that I literally took me weeks to put together, and I had to collect all the little pieces and shit, and weeks of my life up in smoke as soon as I hit that shutter button, and I had a single image to show someone for weeks of work of my life. And I said, what do you think? And they said, that's pretty cool. And I'm like,
yeah,
that was worth all my... That was worth tearing apart the living room and going up and collecting actual pine needles and cutting them all by hand and making these trees and finding the props.
Years ago, I mean, going back to influences, one of my biggest influences when I was a kid was a pulp illustrator, like interior art illustrator. I mean, he did some covers too, but he was mostly interior art, named Virgil Finlay. And Virgil Finlay did stipple, or what a lot of people call pointillism.
Uh-huh.
And like, I always looked at that sort of thing and went, that is amazing. And I think part of why he did that is because it transferred well on shitty paper.
Yeah.
So he did, and pulp was literally pulp paper. It was shitty paper. So he did these amazeballs illustrations all in dots. And some of the first stuff that I wanted to do well was stipple. And then there came this point where I did like an 11x14 drawing of like fantasy based, a couple of girls with swords and a giant dragon. And it was on 11x14, and the whole fucking page is full of dots. It took me 60 hours. Whoa. I know it took me 60 hours to do this piece. And I put it out on in the internet, and
couldn't give a fuck, right?
Right. It's like anything else. You do like, I draw naked chicks all the time, and it's like everybody's like, yes, and it's 1,000 likes and so on. It's like I do this thing that took me 60 hours, and you get like 5 likes, but a whole bunch of comments that say, wow, that's really gorgeous. But nobody fucking invests in it. Nobody hits like, or I'm just giving that as an example. It's like likes are not the most important thing in the. I'm just saying that it wasn't like, in my head it was, this is it. This is the one. This is the thing that I spent the most time. This is the culmination of my art. This is the culmination of what I can do. And everybody's like, yeah, it's nice.
Oh, good job.
Really, good job. Pat on the back. So I literally, that was the last piece that I did in full stipple. That from that moment on, I was like, I am doing line work. I'm doing lines so that people know what the fuck they're looking at.
Stipple painting was like the first form of painting that I learned, and I remember when I was in middle school, I made a giant flower. Like, it was huge. I don't even remember how big the paper was, but it was gigantic, and it was a big flower all in stipple paint, and it took me so long to do, and I don't even have it to show anything. Like, I don't even have it.
And you bring it home, your parents like, yeah.
I don't even know if I brought it home. I just remember it being in the art room, hung up.
I can remember having a portfolio piece in art class in high school, and I mentioned it because, art class in high school was very important to me.
Oh, yeah.
But I had a portfolio piece that was like, do something in this style. And that was something that was completely different from the rest of my style. And everybody always stopped on it. And it's like, this isn't me. I mean, I'm glad I did it.
Right.
But this isn't me. So I literally took it out of the portfolio because this is not something that I do.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this is back to the thing. Do your own different anthologies or your anthology of different genres. Like, do your art in, maybe even do that. Like, maybe not even change the story necessarily, but like for one comic, change the art style of something you would never do. Or just to like, I think every animated show has done it, and even some of the sitcoms have done it where they completely change up like the style, but the story
format
changes.
for one episode. Yeah.
And there's brilliant. This is obviously going to be like a meme example, but the steamed hams bit from The Simpsons. There are collections of videos out there where it's a different animator taking each 14-second chunk, and it's fucking brilliant.
Well, it just shows how versatile art is.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows what
same dialogue, same story, same everything, but it
which is nice. But that's still kind of a removed example of what you're talking about because that's different artists. Whereas,
right. I'm saying, but
whereas like I can remember like one of the comic book artists I grew up with, who was a contemporary comic book artist and still is Jim Lee. Jim Lee's been in charge of DC for a while and so on. But once upon a time, he was the guy drawing X-Men. He was the guy drawing Batman. And I can remember him doing a bit on Batman where it looked like his usual pen and ink art, his usual cross-hatched lines and everything else. But for like either a dream sequence or a flashback sequence or whatever, he did it as like watercolors or something, and just completely changed up his format.
That's
and
cool.
It was mind-blowing and it was so gorgeous and it was so cool to see. I wouldn't necessarily want to see a whole book by him done that way, but it was awesome to see him do something in a completely different style, but you could tell it was still him.
It's cool. It's nice. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Like when, whatever, another, overplayed reference, I'm sure, is like American Dad. When they moved to TBS, they started getting like fucking surreal.
Yeah.
And they'll like when a cartoon like steps into anime for a little while. Futurama tried that for a bit and for one bit. And it's interesting. Like I'm saying, like flex your muscle because everybody is going to see your stuff, but unless they see the thing that hits their brain the right way, they're like, I don't get it, whatever.
Yeah,
like, I see it.
That's all true. But unfortunately for me, I feel like I do that too much.
Yeah.
And I say that as somebody who has had for years been at local Comic-Cons, and my table is full of everything that I've done. Everything. So it's like, it's too much. I mean, I want exactly what you're talking about. You want to be able to have something on the table that calls in each person. So that means like all the different styles that I've done, all the different types of projects I've done, all the different, like, whether it's something pinup, whether it's something comics, whether it's something, comics that whether it's something personal, whether it's something, whatever. I mean, it's like all those different things, everything that I've published, everything that I've been published in, everything that's a pinup, everything that's like just a comic book drawing, all of that shit's on the table in the hopes that because it's so fucking diverse, as each person passes by the table, the one item on the table that it speaks to them will grab their eye. Which is horseshit because there's too much stuff on the table.
Right. It's cluttered.
I'm just saying, doesn't really work like that. You've got 6 feet. Maybe 3 feet, depending on what the convention is. It's like, and it all needs to be enough and built up enough of one thing that it grabs your audience. Really.
Yeah. I'm
most
not saying
of the time, that's what life really is.
Yeah. This is a concept I'm not saying to implement in like commercial life because I think homogeneity is not good. I think the people who get the most traffic are the people who do everything in their style and they draw people into their world. I think if you're like putting together something for yourself to show your whatever your expertise or your versatility, like you do that for yourself. And if you like it, and maybe the thing is it has to be like with my RJ book, it's all RJ. So pick one subject and do a bunch of different things and be like,
right.
okay,
So it still,
here.
it still fits.
Yeah, like so
still fits.
you're flexing your muscle and you can see what you're going on here, and maybe by accident you'll find out you're better at something that you thought.
Yeah.
Like
you still need that focus. Even if you have a lot of diversity around it, you still need that focus.
Yeah.
And that's the idea of what calls to your audience, supposedly.
Yeah.
So using RJ as an example, are you drawn to RJ as a character, or are you drawn to the concept of one character being written into a whole bunch of different genres? Doesn't matter. One way or the other, you've done something with a central focus, even though it has a lot of minutia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's basically my overarching theme here is like it, and I think that's what a lot of these big, like what DC did, and a lot of these, they put maybe I'm getting into too much here, but it feels when there's too much, you're trying to appeal to everybody, and you're like, oh, this will hit this group and this will hit this group, whatever. If it's the same thing in different styles and it's the same through line, the same color, the same blood that runs through the same characters, it's just presented a different way. Great.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. When you go to an artist, like when you go to your booth or anybody's booth, if they're a local artist or, whoever, a comic book artist, and they get set up at a Comic-Con, all of their stuff is going to have their flavor. I think it's going to be a matter of like, because obviously being a purveyor of Comic-Cons, if I walk up to a dude and he's got sheets and sheets of characters from Ninja Turtles to Marvel to DC to like the Stranger Things universe and yada, 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 I'm like, oh, this is cool. But it's like, it's kind of like I'm walking through an art gallery and I'm like, okay, I saw it all. Now what?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's focus on one thing and let that be your thing. Like, let's say, your thing is watercolor or your thing is paint or whatever. I get those people. They'll have huge blown up. Yeah.
It's like the pop figures. It's you're drawn to the cutesiness of it. And then, which is a style. Now you start looking for the one that calls to you that, represents, the fandom or whatever that you adore.
Fandom is so weird. It's such a strange phenomenon where you're like, everybody does it, and we all make fun of each other for different things. Like, it's funny to me that someone will point to someone reading a book and be like, Harry Potter, that's a fake character for dorks, while they're wearing like a sports jersey, essentially cosplaying as a real life hero of theirs.
Right.
And they're like, Troy Aikman, now that's a real dude. This Harry Potter character, like, you're still doing fantasy football shit. Like, it's all the same bullshit. Right. It's just different flavors. But we're still looking at each other, except for furries. Those people are fucking gross. I will never accept a furry.
They always take it, man. They always it's always the exception is always the furries.
Furry every time. I don't care who you are. But that's the thing. We all are like, and I think it's just to the degree, because when you're a super nerd, no matter what the thing you're involved in, you're a super nerd. Like, you can be a super gun nerd. Like, you're like, oh, I can strip this down and clean it. This is a blah, blah, blah with this caliber. Or you get super into Warhammer 40K, or you're super into Dungeons and Dragons. Like, having an intimate knowledge of literally anything makes you a fucking nerd, because it can alienate you immediately from any layman you try to explain it to. And that's what a nerd is.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, when was if you were to say, well, what was the last interaction with a nerd? Oh, when you got cornered by them and they tried to like onion breath you to death with all their fucking Star Wars figurines in their collection and shit, because they have an intimate knowledge of this particular topic and they are so desperate to tell you about it because
nobody else. Yeah. It's like me when I try to talk to David about like a research study or something along those lines, and he just stares at me and I'm like, okay. And we're done here.
Or all the rom-coms that you want to watch and he won't watch with you.
Yeah,
anything can be like, I'm telling you, anything can be presented in a compelling narrative. I think your problem, Krista, is you have no idea what a compelling narrative is.
Well, not everybody's a raconteur. I mean, it would be fair. Not everyone's a raconteur.
No, but Chris's stories often lead nowhere, start nowhere, and end nowhere. She'll say, "Oh, I knew growing up. I knew a friend who had a video game. We would play it every once in a while at his house." And that was the end of the story. And I'm sitting here waiting for anything to happen for a middle and an end. But that was
Can you name the video game?
It was Resident Evil. It happened last night.
Okay.
Yeah. This happened last night.
She goes, yeah, I had a friend who had that, and I would watch him play it sometimes. And that was the story. I said, okay, and?
Don't let him give you too much, Al.
That's it.
You know who I live with, right?
The beginning of a story.
I'm just saying.
You
married him. I mean, I married you too.
You did marry us. Thanks.
He was there.
My beginning, middle, and end was, I had neighbors that played Resident Evil. I don't remember if it was this one or not, but I used to watch them play it all the time. And it had the dogs in it, so I don't know. And he was like,
Act 1 of your story is you have neighbors.
What brought it up?
We were watching a video on YouTube.
Yeah, we were watching a review of a video game, and that's what brought it up.
So it was in context.
Right, but let me, before you're like, hey.
He was watching a documentary on He-Man, and you were like, hey, what was that video game that my neighbors used to play?
Defend it after this. Act 1 of Chris's story is, I used to have neighbors. Act 1. Act 2 is, he had a video game system, and he owned Resident Evil. That's Act 2. That's when we raised the stakes. Act 3 was, I used to watch him play it sometimes.
Hey, I don't go by act structure in my stories. If I have something to say, I'm going to say it, regardless if it's Act 1, 2, and 3.
Right. Well, if you want me to look over and be like, I'm compelled, make it compelling. Tell me something interesting. Everybody has the ability to breathe in and out. I don't need you to reminisce about when you did it a time that is not now.
Listen, if she wants to communicate to you, she gets to communicate to you. You want to make the story better? That's where you come in. You're the raconteur.
I did.
Right?
I asked. I
said and
I said and what else happened? And she goes, "That's it."
It works.
You're supposed to say, "Yeah, I used to play that."
No. You take the story to the next level. You talk about the time when the video game came to life and it sucked you all in, and you had to play Resident Evil until finally you put the stone back into the statue, and everybody yelled Jumanji. And then it was awesome.
That's all very well and good when the mics are running, but when it's not, when I don't have to be tap dancing like this for all you happy motherfuckers, like I don't want to have to go through pedantic bullshit and build upon something that was shaky at best. I'm not going to build a foundation. I'm not going to build upon that foundation of not even sand. Like that's not even sand. That's like that is.
I'm seeing both sides of this. I gotta admit.
Yeah, like.
I'm feeling for both of you. I really am. Especially when I'm thinking about all that baby shit all over the floor.
Yeah, there's just piles and piles of it, and you're just sliding all over it like we live in a fucking ice rink.
Wow.
Just slipping and sliding on baby diarrhea all the time.
Wow, now I know what to get you for Christmas. I'm getting you a mop.
Yeah, we need one of those Swiffers that's especially made for baby diarrhea. You see the mom, that would be a hilarious infomercial. Mom up to her ankles in baby diarrhea. Like, this mop.
Again.
Crosswave will do great.
Yeah. The classic, like, pratfall, which is like, whoa, and falls. It's like,
has this happened to you?
And then she goes to try and make eggs, and she smashes them against her head because she doesn't know how to make eggs. I would love to do an infomercial where, like, the person in black and white demonstrating how not to do things does literally everything in their life wrong. Like we hang on them using the product wrong, but then we watch them use the bathroom wrong or make eggs wrong or like try to work the TV or like try to leave their own house. Yeah, like all that shit. Like,
Mom, why is your head in the toilet?
Are you just bad at life? This is great for you.
Anywho,
it's the holodeck.
Yeah. Please, dear God,
with a replicator.
Let me live long enough to see the singularity. Dear God. Then we get like whatever. All like existential issues aside, if we can get to the singularity, I'll feel a little more confident. However,
you're saying you want to get sucked into a black hole?
No. The AI singularity.
Oh, okay.
Where, well, maybe not. Maybe I'm using the wrong term. Maybe not singularity, but like because what I don't want to open this can of worms, Scott, but when
I feel
you
like
are
it's already half
when you
open.
are being teleported on Star Trek, you are being broken down, disintegrated, and rebuilt from essentially destroyed and rebuilt. A new the one you were is destroyed and a new one is created.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I never. That was the thing. It's like I never thought of it that way until the movie The Prestige came out.
In my
and then
head,
I was like, fuck, that's true.
In my head, it was always the computer digitized you, like slurped you up into it, like contained, basically turned your matter and energy.
Right. It's just taking that
opposite
and
of
literally just turning you into energy.
Yeah.
And then shooting you to a place and just recompositing you there. So from that standpoint, I just thought it was literally taking you and turning you into something else, sending you somewhere and reconstituting you there. So from that standpoint, I was always like, oh, well, that's fine. There was nothing in my head that was like, holy shit, you're being destroyed and rebuilt.
From an outside perspective, you're just watching someone turn into light and reappear. But if you stop and think about it, you're watching someone get completely obliterated and then rebuilt brand new, just with all the memories of the old one.
Right. That's just it. When you put it that way, ever since that movie and, putting it in those terms, it's what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, fucking terrifying. Yeah.
But there's a workaround.
But it doesn't stop me from wishing that there was like some way to just walk into a teleport to get to England faster.
Right. And that's the thing. I would like to be there to watch the first person to do it.
And then talk to them afterwards.
Yeah,
and see if they still know their
be
name.
like, because obviously, if it were like, if they're showing it to the public, it's worked. Like they're not going to unveil it and be like, "Whoops, we flied somebody."
Right.
If it's the public, it's working.
Holy shit, it's Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, but just like, there's no tests for it, but there's always something in my mind that's like your consciousness has like something tangible, but if we can break it down, I realize this is getting way too deep.
We need a whole episode for this.
Let's talk about Star Trek another time.
We still need to find that Star Trek Bible.
Yes.
I can probably find one at Half Price Books as soon as the pandemic's over. So, Scott, let's start wrapping up. Drop us some places that we can find you. Like you're on Instagram, obviously. Give it up.
It's easy to find me under Scott P. Vaughn, Vaughn spelled Vaughn, or Doc Redfield, Redfield, all one word in either case. And that's usually me on a lot of social media. But it's just easiest to find me and my creativity, including Warbirds of Mars, at either vaughn-media.com or just go to warbirdsofmars.com and you will find it. I also have my publishing company. The past year, I've been publishing books this year, so you can just go to paperstreetent.com.
Yeah, I'm going to put all of these in the. After this, hopefully, if you're watching this after the fact, I'll have most or all of these here, and then when I release the radio plays, I'll see and remember if I. Whatever. Look for links, people. If I remembered them, they're there. If you don't see them there, then it didn't. It's also in the comments. But like when I release them as a podcast, they won't be there. So if I remember, whatever. If I didn't, remind me. So
well, the good news is once those are republished again, because it's been a while since I've. I realized part of what brought this up is I realized recently that the links. We're no longer working on warbirdsofmars.com to listen to the radio plays. So,
I guarantee
once
they're back up,
website once FFOP gets them back up, I'll be able to, put links up again, which is awesome. I'm really looking forward to that.
I'll get it pushed back up, and let's just say in the new year we'll do something like this. Christmas special is blowing my brains out my asshole. And
what are you doing for a Christmas special? What's the FFOP / now that the kids in bed Christmas special?
Oh yeah, I guess this is a good time to plug it. Christmas special on the 19th. We're doing gingerbread houses. We're going to do a contest. Andy is going to do a Christmas craft. We're going to be talking about Christmas stuff.
Is it from the FFOP studios, or are you doing live again like you did here with Halloween?
It'll be like, it'll kind of like the Halloween episode, except instead of doing it in your haunted house, we'll be doing it in my Christmassy living room.
Gosh.
Yep.
So it'll be like, we got the Christmas tree up. We got all it'll be fine.
All right. Okay.
And I'll have a monitor with a fire on it. So
never a good idea, fire.
Hopefully, yes, this will be way safer. It's 120 volts. So
it'll be right under our Christmas tree.
Yeah, right under the tree. So yeah, if you like holiday specials and Christmas specials, I'll probably bring up Hanukkah too. So yeah, come by. I guess that's it. Unless there's anything you want to throw out there that we've forgotten.
No.
Right.
I think we're good.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming by and watching. I hope to see you at the Christmas special. If this is in the future and it's already happened, there's reruns.
Yeah.
Watch it.
There's always reruns.
Yeah, I realize Christmas specials and Christmas themed shit has a very small half-life, and the Halloween stuff has a longer half-life if you're like me. But still, might as well watch it and then watch the Halloween one.
True.
Your Christmas episode will be big with female audiences.
Yes.
We'll have lots of we'll be holding mugs with two hands, and like I'll be wearing a really thick turtleneck, and we'll dish about stuff, and I'll be like, "Oh my God, let's talk about our periods."
I don't want to talk about that.
I do, because sometimes when I have a heavy flow day, I need maximum wing power.
Oh my God.
It's true.
That's how we're ending the live stream?
Yeah, that's how we're ending it.
Happy birthday, Elliot.
When I have a heavy flow, I need maximum wing power.
In the future, when you listen to this, happy second birthday.
It hit when he said
Does everybody have words of wisdom to close out today? I have some.
Do it then.
Yeah, I have nothing.
Yeah, it costs nothing to pay attention.
Accurate.
Uh,
Well, it cost David time to listen to me talk about nothing.
It's true. And my time is money, so it does cost me a little.
I don't pay him.
No, but I mean,
Telling ya.
Star Trek wise, like my time is not valueless. Like Wesley sucks, but he's still, you can squeeze some value out of his time. Anyway, guys, thanks for showing up if you did. And we'll see you next time on
Now that the kid's
show.
asleep.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Bye.